I'm Kate White, and welcome to our discussion today, What No One Ever Tells You About Grief. I am the author of 20 mysteries and thrillers and a former magazine editor-in-chief. And I'm coming to you from my Facebook page live, but also the service marketing company that produces my newsletter and the newsletter of so many other authors. And with me today is the amazing Dr. Dale Atkins. Dale is a PhD, a licensed psychologist and educator with more than, hard to believe, 45 years of experience working with individuals, couples, and families. She's the author of 8 books, most recently the wonderful children's book, The Turquoise Butterfly. It's just such a perfect book to give a child, particularly a grandchild. And for 22 years, and this is how I met Dale, she was a recurring guest on NBC's Today Show, and we were often paired together, which was really fun. So here's why we're here. My most recent psychological thriller, which came out last week, is called I Came Back for You. And it's the story of a woman named Bree whose life is upended when it turns out that the serial killer thought to have murdered her daughter gives a deathbed confession saying that, yes, he killed 4 women, but the daughter Melanie wasn't one of them. And Bree is left with no choice but to try to figure out the truth because she knows she can't get back to trying to put a life together again without knowing that the killer is convicted and serving time in prison, life in prison, and rather than walking free in the world. And as I was doing the book, I thought a lot about grief because the book is not only a whodunit, where she's trying to find out who the real killer is, but it's, as I said, a psychological thriller that deals with her upheaval, not only about things like having to be involved with her ex-husband again in the search for truth, but also grief. And I thought, we don't know a lot about grief, even though it's something we all experience. And Dr. Atkins was so lovely to agree to come on and talk to me about grief. Dale, I wanted to start with something that came up when we were chatting beforehand, a couple days ago. You had asked me, because the book deals with the grief that comes from losing a loved one to a violent death. Will we be talking about that? And I just said, oh, maybe at the end if we have time, but that's really so unique. But then after I wrote that email to you, I thought, wow, I remember you saying that grief is always unique for people, that there's no standard grief. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. And again, I just want to say that it's so lovely being next to you, talking to you again about anything, particularly something as important and as prevalent in all of our lives as grief. Yet it is something, as you say, that so many people are uncomfortable talking about. Specifically, it's unique because we are each unique, and our experiences are unique, and our relationships are unique. So even though in the olden days, there was something called the stages of grief, they worked in certain ways. And it was really about people who were dealing with end of stage cancer. And we were talking about issues having to do with how we deal with death. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was very instrumental in sharing these stages of grief. In reality, what we've learned over the years is that there really isn't a path that is universal. Everybody grieves differently, and everybody grieves in a way that, again, reflects the relationship. And I think that what we don't know, and you used the word upended, and I'm so glad you did, Kate, because grief upends our lives. And it upends our lives in ways that we didn't expect. Everyone expects grief to have to do with sadness, and of course it does, and loss and disappointment. What we don't typically expect, and what people never talk about, is that it goes on for a very, very long time, and that grief changes us forever. Grief really upends our life, and it also changes who we are, how we look at the world, and how we have integrated or not integrated the death of someone who is important to us. And so when we proceed with trying to deal with the death, we think, many of us, that there is a prescriptive path, and that, first I'm going to feel this, then I'm going to feel that, then I'm going to feel this. And then what happens is that may be so for a while, but then we live our life and there's a hole in our life. And how do we deal with that hole in our life? How do we deal with the memories that come up at unexpected times? How do we deal with feeling like no one really understands? People are telling me to get on with my life, rather than, I know it's really a process. So grief is a process, and it generally takes a lifetime to be able to feel all of the myriad feelings that we feel about a person after they're no longer in our life.
I'm glad you mentioned the Kubler-Ross 5 stages of grief, because I remember finally reading, really, she was talking about dying patients, and,
Yes.
Talked about the denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And it, people would sometimes say to you when they lost a loved one, I'm in the anger phase. And that
Right.
she was not talking about losing a loved one. She was talking about dealing with your own
Right.
terminal diagnosis. And it was a relief to see that, that had all been misinterpreted. But are there, in this whole upheaval, are there any milestones that people go through that might give you a sense that you've made some, kind of progress in going through it?
It's a great question. And again, I come back to, we're all unique, and there's no right way to do it. I think that as a society, we are so uncomfortable with grief and death, and whether it's prolonged grief or not, we are uncomfortable because most of us want to help the people who are sad or who are stuck, and we want to help them through it. We want to help them along. So we make suggestions, and sometimes those suggestions can be lovely. Come to a movie, be distracted. Let's just, not talk about it, or let's talk about it, but it may not be right for that person at that time, or what's right on Tuesday may not be right on Friday. And generally, people just need to be able to have permission to be where they are in their own process. And I actually don't like the word progress, because it means that we're going to a goal, and that where I am is not okay. But where I am has to be okay, because that's where I am. And I need to be in a community, in a family, in an environment where people let me be okay. And when that's not possible, I'm alone. So I'm alone in my grief. And sometimes that's useful, but sometimes that's just, it adds to the sense of, what am I going to do with my life? Who am I without this role? Who am I without this person? I feel as if I'm only part of myself. How do I do this? How do I do that? And depending again on the relationship, if one has lost a child, if one has lost a spouse, if one has lost a parent, a dear friend, I think that we have to consider what that relationship was. We make assumptions, Kate, oh, she lost her mother. And then we go into, the mother-daughter relationship, the mother-son relationship, without knowing necessarily about their relationship. So this may be a process of regret. It may be a process of, if only I had, or it may be a process of, I'm so glad that I had the relationship I had. And so as I mourn, I'm also remembering all those wonderful experiences which helped me to integrate in a positive way, in a healthy way. And another person may be having to deal with all of the regrets, all of the things they didn't say or did say and are embarrassed about, but they can't share them with other people. And so the regret becomes more of a burden, which
Right.
affects the grief. So
Yeah.
again, we often don't know very much about the real nitty-gritty of people's relationships. So I like to suggest that we just are witnesses, and we're there, we're listening if they want to talk. We walk with them. We're companions through grief. And
That's
most of
so
us,
much, Gail. You know,
most of us are
what you
alone.
just said, yeah, what you said
Yes.
too touched me because I lost two younger brothers in the last couple of years, and it's been so devastating. And one of the interesting things about it is, you know, I've a number of friends who've lost their husbands, and they talk about how much people rally around them. And,
Yes.
you know, I didn't feel, even with my closest friends, as wonderful as they are, very rarely did somebody circle back. And I thought they don't realize, you know, because, oh, it's a sibling, you know, what it was like to lose it. Because it, as you say, it all depends on the particular relationship. It doesn't matter, in a sense, what it is just in words. It's what it is in terms of your feelings. You said
But you know,
something.
could I just say something about the sibling loss? The sibling loss is one of the greatest losses of all, because we are supposed to, we know we're going to lose our parents. We are
Right.
supposed to go through our life with our peer sibling group who know more about our lives than almost anybody, because they've
Yeah.
been there to witness the arc of our life. And so when people lose a sibling, the experience that you had, sadly, is often the experience that people have. They don't realize, many people don't realize how traumatic it is to lose this person who has been with you since you were born or since
Right.
they were born, know your parents in a way that nobody else did, understand how you came up through your life together, whether you had a good relationship, a bad relationship, it didn't matter, because they were your mirror. And when we lose our siblings at any stage of life, it is a loss that is really incomparable.
Yeah.
And we're not supposed to lose our children, and we do lose our siblings, but it's a very unique kind of loss. The first book I wrote was called Sisters, and I
Right.
was doing a television show, and many people in the audience had lost their siblings. And this was in 1980 something. And my publisher wouldn't let me include the chapter on when you lose your sibling because it was too heavy. Can you imagine?
Wow. Thank you for saying that. That really validates something for me. One of the things that you said you used a term in one of our email exchanges called the whammies.
Oh,
And
yes.
even without having a discussion with you by email about what that is, I thought, oh, I know exactly what the whammies are. Can you tell us what the whammies are and how those happen in grief as we are on that journey?
They happen by surprise usually, and they take us by surprise. And we may be all set to go to a place, then all of a sudden we hear a piece of music that reminds us of the person who died. Or we go to a place, or we see someone who has the kind of walks like they walk, or looks like them in a way. And we are in that moment, we are taken out of where we are, and we are immediately, it's like a wham, we are immediately brought to another place in time. And that place in time is a place that is nothing like the place where we're supposed to be right now. So then we have to go through showing up here in the way people are expecting us to, because we can't really tell everybody about what's going on in most cases. And it's like whammy, like, in the cartoons, or when it's somebody hits you over the head and then it's wham. And that's exactly what it is. It's everything is blown apart, but yet you have to bring it back together. And it's usually a surprise, as I said. And often it makes us feel even more alone, because many people will say, and we will often say to ourselves with that critical voice, is, I don't understand why you're having this reaction now. The person's been dead for 15 years. I was talking to someone just 2 days ago, and she said, my husband's been gone for 20 years. And whenever I see a couple holding hands, I tear up.
Oh,
Now, that's no longer a whammy for her because she expects it to happen
right, you're
and she
right.
welcomes it. It's kind of like, come on in. But for most of us, it's unexpected. It's private. We don't necessarily want to tell everybody what's going on, but we might find ourselves with tears rolling down our eyes, or we may feel ourselves very, very tight because all of a sudden we have to protect ourselves because we're not in a situation where we feel we can just let it go. So those are the whammies. And
Yeah,
I don't know anybody who hasn't experienced them.
right. What do you do then, particularly if a whammy occurs in a professional setting? My poor brother told me that the weekend after one of our parents died, he had a really, excuse the expression, dick of a boss. And the boss called a meeting for that Sunday. And um, I think this was, I think it was my mother, and she had died on a Thursday, and
Oh,
the boss wants him to come in on the weekend. And, I'm wondering if he had had some sort of whammy moment then, and you're having plenty of them right afterwards. Is there anything to say if you are suddenly find yourself overly emotional in a professional setting, to just explain it without having to go into too much detail?
yeah, I think it's a great question because we don't want to have to defend ourselves because we're human beings and because we have a natural response to loss and grief. And so I think that if people don't know, which is also very unfortunate in the workplace, that the people
Oh,
we're working with don't know that we're experiencing such a profound loss.
right.
But if they don't know, I think that we state the fact, I'm in mourning. I lost my mother. I lost my father. I'm grieving. And I prefer not to come to the meeting because I'm really not sure how together I'm going to be. One of the things that happens when we are grieving is we often have brain fog. We're very confused often. We can't sequence well because we are experiencing something that is so, so overwhelming physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, that it's impossible to expect ourselves to be able to function fully. Yet we go back to work. We find ourselves driving and we don't know where we're going, and it makes perfect sense. Or we leave the house 3 times because we keep forgetting something and we say, oh, what's the matter with me? What's the matter with me is that I am having a human response
Mhm.
to a profound loss. And that's what's happening to me. And by the way, this is exactly the way we're supposed to respond. We're not supposed to respond by pulling up ourselves and going back into the office 3 days later or having someone call a meeting on Sunday. That's not what should be expected. So rather than be defensive, we just put the facts out there. So if I don't really respond to you, it's not because I'm not paying attention. It's because I can't focus. Right?
Right. What about if the whammy occurs there? You could see them being understanding. What about the whammy that occurs a year later and you're
Right.
suddenly very work setting? How do you explain that without looking to somebody who doesn't understand, like you're a little off your rocker that day?
Well, that person will have that feeling. And there's nothing we
Mhm.
can do about it except not pay that close attention to it and not validate it. That's their experience. That doesn't have
Mhm.
to be your experience because if you bring it into your experience, then it makes, again, the burden that the experience that you're having, it makes it burdensome. Whereas before, it may not have been burdensome. It just may be a wave of sadness, a wave of remembrance, a wave of reminiscence. And that in and of itself is only, it only requires some time to be able to acknowledge it, notice it, see, be with it, sit with it, and then say, I see how I'm feeling. I know what this is about. I'm going to deal with it when I get home, but right now I'm just going to pull myself together. And you may then say, depending on who it is, because you don't have to walk around like an open book, but you can say, I just need a minute. Or, excuse me,
Yeah,
I just need to
right,
go to the
right,
restroom. I'll be back. You don't have to tell
right.
everybody your life story. What is important to do is to be in touch with what's happening within yourself. And so if it's a year or 5 years or whatever, if you're with your best friend, you can say it. But if you're with a
Right.
stranger and you don't feel comfortable, you say, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt this because something's coming to me and I'm not focusing. I want to focus. I want to be here for you. Sometimes though,
Mhm.
even with a stranger, when you say what it actually is, it's an amazing opportunity to see if there is a bond that can be made,
Nice.
because
Right.
it's a human connection. It's a risky one, but in my experience, generally people will then share, or they'll just say, oh, I'm so glad you told me, or yes, take the time you need.
Yeah. Uh, just to go back to something you said that I thought was so interesting. Sometimes when I've been in a grieving situation, I've thought in terms of, I've got to get beyond this. And you used the word integration earlier, which I think is very interesting. And also just how grief changes us. And there was a time last year where I thought, wow, my atoms are different than they were before. What
They
is
are.
some guidance in terms of not fighting grief, but letting it be integrated in your life and accepting the new person that you are, as opposed to trying to get beyond it or try to conquer it?
I think that
How do you deal with that integration?
I think that I think one important factor is to not expect that things will go back to the way they were. I want things to go back to normal. It's a new normal because that person is
Hmm.
no longer in your life in the way they were. And I think this is really important. The person is still in your life. The relationship is still there. The memories
Mm.
are there, the stories are there, the experiences are there, the connection is still there. And this is actually why I wrote the children's book, so that we understand that love is eternal, that the connection will never be gone. However, the person isn't here. So, this is one of the reasons, by the way, Kate, that so many people keep talking to their loved one after they're not here, because they're used to talking to them. And it's not, you got to change the habit in the year of
Yeah.
magical thinking. We
But is that good sometimes to
Yes,
continue
it's
the
very good. It's very good because you're moving into a different type of relationship with the person who is still in a
Mm.
relationship with you. So you can't pretend that there's no longer a connection. God willing, there will always be a connection. The integration part is everything that happens to us becomes part of us. It becomes part of our weave. The good stuff, the bad stuff, the happy stuff, the sad stuff. It's all part of us. It's like a big weave. That's all I keep saying, it's a weave, because
Yeah.
at some point, some threads are much more prominent than other threads. And then they kind of blend into the whole tapestry of our life. And if we insist that I have to get over this, as opposed to help weave this through my life and find a way to live with the person no longer here, but still access what they were to me, how they influenced me, what I learned from them, what I hated about them, what I wished I said differently. All of that is part of it.
Hmm.
Then we're no longer trying to get beyond it or over it. We just
Right.
want to
Right.
we want to go through the experience. And which was your question. How do you can't make it go faster, but you can be present in the process, which will make it be, and I use this term in quotes, easier, because you'll be present for it. It doesn't mean you're going to cry less. It doesn't mean you're not going to scream less. It doesn't mean you're going to, stay in bed less. When you're, a woman I know, after her husband died, she didn't care. She just walked her dog in her pajamas. And she said, I knew the dog had to go out. I didn't have enough energy to get myself dressed. And so she put on her trench coat and she went out in her pajamas. And she knew she was going to a different place when she was able to put on her jeans and a big sweater. And then
Mhm.
she said, I knew I was going to a place where I was going to feel less like I did originally. And
Wow.
because she was able to do that, she could see the difference. And then, she had no patience for people. Many of us, after we lose them, we have no patience for people. And then all of a sudden, you do accept an invitation to go out to dinner, but
Yeah,
you're
let me
really
ask.
pissed off if they don't want to talk about your loved one, right?
Right, right. Uh, as you said before, Dale, that you do have to kind of accept, hey, today I do want to do something, today I don't. But what if
Yes.
you end up and you realize you're kind of spiraling where it's a little bit farther down the road, and all of a sudden you're in bed one day, and the next day you're in bed, and the next day, is there anything you can do where you realize, hey, I've kind of let this become a weird habit, I'm in a spiral?
Yeah.
Is it good to, quote, stay busy, do something, anything for those times where you realize you've lost a little bit of control on this in the situation?
Yeah, and I think that sometimes that's where a friend really can be very helpful. You can, if somebody comes over and gets you out of bed and you just sit there, even if you're sitting in your pajamas, or then, you watch a movie, or then you go to somebody's birthday party and you say, it's your best friend's birthday party, you got to go. How do you go? How do you get dressed? I think that there are goals and there their life engagements, so that this is important. I want to do this. I want to show up here. But as long as people don't expect you
Mhm.
to show up in a way that you don't feel is authentic, that's really good. Now, maybe you get your hair done, you get a new dress, whatever. But some people will go, let's say, to a wedding ceremony, but they don't want to go to the party, and that has to be okay. Um, but they want to go to celebrate, but they can't really be there in that full flourish, and they don't want to take it away from perhaps the wedding couple. The other thing is, I think it's important to be able to know that there's somebody there for you. And I
Mhm.
mean, you may want to talk to a pastor, you may want to talk to a therapist, but not to anybody who judges you who
Mhm.
judges you. Because grief is not to be judged. Grief is to be, as I said, witnessed. And very many of us want to be alone. And that's okay until, your whole world seems to fall apart, which it does often. And you don't quite know how to start putting it together. Not back together, but just together, because it's going to be different. And sometimes friends can help with that. Not
Mhm.
friends who tell you what to do all the time, but friends who can be there and guide you and do things with you that you don't think you can do again on your own.
Yeah, that
Does that
brings
answer
me to
your
something.
question?
Yeah, perfect. And it brings me to something I wanted to just talk about as we're wrapping up here. What are some of the biggest mistakes we make when a friend or loved one is grieving? And how can we be better at that? I have a friend who has lost two children in their 30s,
Mm,
and one child left. And she said and a huge list of really bad comments she got was, well, you still have your daughter.
mm.
And people can sometimes say things that are just so awful, even though they might mean well. How can we be better at helping our friends deal with their own grief, and what are things we should say and shouldn't say?
As I said before, something that you say to someone on one day may be exactly what you shouldn't say to someone else on another day. Again, we are all different. I think there are a couple of really good rules that we can follow. One
Mhm.
is what I'm about to say going to be helpful? And even if it might be helpful to you, as I know this person, do I think this will be helpful to her or him? The other thing is never ever say, I know what you're feeling. Even if they lost their spouse and you lost your spouse, even if they lost their child and you lost their child, say, I remember feeling awful when my child died. I can't even imagine how you must be feeling.
Mm.
I'm here to listen. I'm here to just be with you. I don't know what your experience is, but I want you to know that I'm going to be here. The other thing is just tell me what I can do. Nobody who's grieving can tell you what they want you to do. You just have to make some offers. I'm going to the market. Tell me what you need. Or I'm going to the market and I know you like this, and this. I'll drop it off. Um, I'm making double soup tonight. I'm bringing it over.
Mhm.
May I walk the dog? Okay. Can I do the clean? Can I take the cleaning? Things that people can't do because everything is too much. So offer, but don't be invasive and don't be intrusive. The other thing is, it's been quite a while now. I think it's time for you to do X. It's judgment, it's critical,
Um,
and it's your timeline and it's your view of what's supposed to happen. This isn't about you. This is about someone
That's why
else's heart that's broken.
I love
Yeah.
what you said about just thinking in terms of everything is too much to do. So one of the best things you can do for someone is do the things that are too much to do. And if you are grief-stricken and you're overwhelmed, is there a way to ask for that? Can you take these things to the cleaners? Can you get me some? Are you making double soup by any chance? How do you ask for that?
Again, it's so hard because often when we've lost someone that we love, we we don't feel so great about ourselves at the moment, and we feel, in many religions, the mourner is not supposed to do anything. They're not supposed to make their own food. They're supposed to get help dressing. They're not supposed to do anything because it is understood that they don't have any energy and that they are just supposed to be in their sadness, in their moment. So I think that if you can, you can say, and everybody doesn't want to put anybody out because everybody's busy and I don't want to impose upon you. Please tell me. This is
Mhm.
what I think I can do. Does that work? Or I'm going to give you 3 options. Pick one. But your question was about the mourner, him or herself. Think of what might make your day a little bit easier. And if it is, can you drop the kids at school for me? Can
Yeah.
you go to the market? I hate to ask, but I'm supposed to go. I'm supposed to show up and give this talk. Please just call them and tell them I can't go. And whatever it is, if you can, say yes. Whatever it is, even if you don't think it's important to the person. And
Yeah.
also, most people will not ask for something. If they ask for something, they wouldn't ask for something very big, but it could lead to something that's really monumental. And that could be a life changer. If you can help someone on a regular basis as they are trying to get their life together, and that's one less thing they have to think about, that can be really, really helpful. I think the other thing is to don't assume you know how someone's feeling, and don't
Mhm.
assume because they've got themselves put together and they're dressed and their makeup is on, or they got their suit on and their ties straight. Don't assume that they're doing okay. So, oh, look at you, you're looking great. I bet you're feeling better, right?
Uh,
This is not a contest. This is not a race. The fact that I got myself looking good enough to walk out the door took all my energy. And please don't make any assumptions, right? The other
yeah.
thing is when you go out with someone, you can ask, would you like, I've been thinking about your late husband. Would you like to talk about him tonight, or would you like just to, talk about something else? Or would you like not to talk? Would you like to go to a movie, or would you like to hang out and talk? And would you like to talk about your husband or not?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we need to know what space we can enter so that we're helpful. Because maybe the person's been talking about their loved one for 2 weeks and they really just want to not anymore on
Mhm.
this afternoon when they're with you, right? It doesn't mean they're no longer in mourning. It means they need a little break. And
Yeah.
if you know what you need, it's really helpful. A lot of people are afraid to say, I'm kind of I just need some time to just, go out and have fun. Well, you're in mourning, right? Don't
Yeah,
judge.
right. Don't judge ourselves either. DL, so interesting for me personally, beyond what it who's listening. I so appreciate it because we really don't talk much about grief much. And then we go through it and we don't have tools that would be really helpful. And the tools aren't anything specific as much as from what you're saying, that we just have to, that this is going to change us. We're not the same, and that we have to integrate it in our lives. And I thank you so much for sharing this with us and your incredible wisdom.
Thank you.
It's just great to be having an exchange with you after those fabulous times we had at the Today Show, and what it was like to sit and hair side by side and have somebody like
Yeah.
Susie there. Before we leave, I'd love you to just share a little bit about the turquoise butterfly, because
Oh,
you happen to have a copy handy. I
I happen to have a copy. How nice of you to ask.
Yeah. Well,
so this is the turquoise butterfly, and it's about Grandma Sylvia and her granddaughter Victoria. And among the many things that I touch on in the book is also the fact that children too need to learn how to come to terms with the death of people that they love, and because most children will lose someone, and that someone is probably going to be their grandparent earlier than anybody else. And so the book is really not just about death, but it's about change, it's about transformation, it's about anxiety, it's about how we can be present for people from different generations and how much we offer each other. And I was taken so much by the relationship of Bree and Mel in the book, and how the generational divide was pretty hard. I don't want to ruin anything for your readers, but it was pretty hard during her growing up, and how this eternal love was there, and then and drove this mother to be able to have compassion, in addition to understanding how difficult it was for her with this young girl. And I loved the way you drew that, the way you presented that intergenerational relationships of all kinds carry with them a lot of baggage, and you can still love someone, and you can still care deeply for someone, even when it may not be the relationship that you had hoped for and the relationship that you had dreamed of, and that relationships are always evolving. And so that's kind of what the turquoise butterfly was about. And when I was reading I Came Back for You, I thought, oh my God, look how you wove this in. So it was nice to look at the book through that.
Well, I know the book has been so well received. Wait, okay, I'll just give a second. I didn't even have mine ready, but I'll grab it. I'm here in Uruguay where we live in the winter. This is I Came Back for You. And it's, as I said earlier, a psychological thriller and a whodunit. And the first 6 chapters takes place in Uruguay, which is a fascinating country. And so I give readers a little taste of it. And if anyone would like to learn more about the book, they can go to my website, katewhite.com, or you can order a copy on Amazon, where it's been great. I've made the top 10 in Kindle, and #1 in mysteries and psychological thrillers.
Fabulous.
Yeah, all of Kindle for
well deserved. That's fantastic.
So I hope anyone who's listening will purchase my book, I Came Back for You, not
And.
or.
Yeah, here we go. This is what we have here.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this, and it made me feel like old times again.
I love that feeling. Thank you. And continued success with the book. And I'm so happy to talk to you all the time.